Good evening, New Jersey students, parents, counselors. We hope you're going to enjoy this session with Hampshire College. One piece of housekeeping, Q&A is a button that you will use if you want to ask a question. Your cameras and videos are turned off, so you can't do it that way. And the presenter will get to your question. If not tonight, certainly they'll get back to it. And also go to www.njACAC.org/virtual fair, and you can sign up for another session tonight, or you can find the recordings that will be available probably within the week, and that's going to be over 200 recordings that will be available to you at www.njacac.org/virtual fair. I will turn you over to Bernadette, who is here from Hampshire College.
Greetings, very nice to meet all of you. I am going to share my screen and explain a little bit about Hampshire as we go. So Hampshire College is a little different than most colleges. We have a few things that really make us stand out. One of them is our divisional system. The other is that we do oh, sorry about that, going too fast. Let's go back here a second. Oh, look, it's really going fast. There we go. We do narrative evaluations, which means that we are not giving students letter grades. You're not a letter or a number to us. We don't want to treat you that way with your evaluations. You do self-evaluations as well as getting a really lovely narrative evaluation from your professor. Additionally, we are part of the 5-college consortium, and I'll get a little bit more into that later, but it allows you to access classes from 5 colleges, including Hampshire, and they're all very nearby. And so let's dive right into what Hampshire offers. We have a divisional system that if you are self-driven and you are interested in really taking ownership of your learning, then Hampshire is a great place for you. In our divisional system, we break it into 3 sections rather than 4 years. And so your division 1 year is about exploration, learning about Hampshire, getting used to a narrative evaluation, getting used to the area. You have a lot of leeway about what you can take during that year. In division 2, it is definitely about diving deeper. Creating learning activities for yourself with classes and other opportunities that really give you the potential to narrow in on the ideas that you want to learn about and combine areas of learning even as an option. And then in division 3, your 4th year, you get to do a year-long project. It is very much mirroring a master's thesis, and I'll talk a little more about that as well. So as we move into division 1, we really offer the opportunity for you to take any classes that you want, rather than us telling you what your prerequisites are or what your required courses are. Rather, you really get to choose. I mean, that's really the honest answer. We ask you to take 2 first-year seminars, and other than that, you have the opportunity to choose anything. Most colleges ask you to take specific classes, or they ask you to fulfill requirements in multi-disciplined areas. We do not do that. We are saying you get to choose. You might consider taking an art class, you might take a history class, you might take a performing arts class, and you can do any of that no matter which area of learning, or in other schools we call it majors, but in Hampshire we call it an area of concentration. And in your area of concentration, even if it might be in the performing arts, you can take any courses. You're not limited by what you designate as your initial area of learning or area of concentration. Your first year seminars are actually broken into 4 areas, and that will actually be across all of your learning and the curriculum throughout Hampshire, your 4 years at Hampshire. So there are environment and change, justice and injustice, media and technology, and time and narrative. And you have the opportunity to choose a seminar in any of those 4 areas each of your first 2 semesters. And then we usually only request that you take 2 or 3 classes your first semester in addition to that seminar, and your second semester we suggest 3 or 4 classes depending on what it is that you're interested in studying. We have you work with an advisor. Our advising system is very strong. Every single faculty member is an advisor, which means your professors are really invested in how you're moving through your learning, not just saying you have to check off the boxes. They'll work with you, advise you, and help you move through this divisional system. In the beginning, we assign you an advisor, but you are welcome to request a different advisor your first year. And throughout your 4 years after that, you get to choose your own advisor. The only other requirement we have of you is something called campus engaged learning. And that is really easy to fulfill. It's usually known as get out of your dorm room and do something fun. We request that you do 40 hours total. The first 20, well, any of your 20 hours, we say you can choose. It can be a club, it can be volunteering for an activity, it can be participating in a variety of volunteer opportunities on campus. And then the other thing that we ask you to do is to really consider part of this community campus engaged learning as something to learn about another culture, whether it is learning about race and power within our culture or another country. It might be participating in something that you are really diving into understanding that your whatever your culture is not the only thing out there. And so it can be a really wide range. We have clubs, activities, festivals. Just this past week, we had something that we do several times a year called Hamp Engage. And there's lots of workshops and seminars, and there's lots of things to do with that. And at the end of your first year, you actually put together a portfolio. And that portfolio consists of your most important work. It might be papers, it might be projects, it might be any of the meaningful work that you've done, and you write a retrospective about it. And the other thing that you include in that is your narrative evaluations. And I'm gonna show you, this is actually what just a narrative evaluation of several classes looks like, rather than having a transcript, which just lists all of your classes and your grades. Most times, if you're looking at a transcript, it's 1 or 2 pages that encompasses your entire 4 years. Well, we feel like that does not really show who you are as a learner. It does not show the growth that you've done over the time that you would be at Hampshire. And so what we have you do is in each class, you do both self-evaluations, and then your professors actually write a narrative evaluation about your work. And it is generally showing your strengths. It's showing the areas in which you've grown throughout that course. And it might give some constructive feedback about areas that you can continue to grow as a learner. It often is everything from how you've participated in your class, the way you have worked within the content of the material. Often, if you're learning about something and then you do some extra reading or research on your own just because you're interested, it shows, it's almost always brought up within your narrative evaluation about the way you've interacted with that. And then by the end of your 4 years, you end up with a booklet rather than just 1 or 2 pages. And the booklet is often 20 to 30 pages with showing the growth that you've had during your time at Hampshire. Additionally, students often ask, how does that affect them when they're going to graduate school or applying to jobs later? And everything we hear for the last 50 years that we've been doing this is it actually helps students gain a leg up on other employees or candidates, because they really have to stop and take the time and read about you and learn who you are. And they will see what you did in your first year might really be very different than what you did in your last year. And it's showing that kind of growth and the way you have developed as a learner. And the most important thing we've noticed is that it removes competition from students, between students. And so rather than students sitting around discussing whether you got an A and they got a B, it is really about, what are you learning? How are you interacting with the material? We don't want you to just go through Hampshire and check off the boxes and say, I took this class, I took this class, I took this class. We really want you to own the material. We want you to want to learn it, rather than just saying, I got an A, move on, I'll never use that material again. That is absolutely the reverse of everything we strive for at Hampshire. Every class you take should be meaningful. You get to decide what those classes are. And so rather than us dictating and you just saying, okay, I'll do this, I'll get my A and I'll move on, you get to choose. And by choosing, it is allowing you to take agency, to have ownership, and to participate in that learning in a way that makes many students go much deeper. After you get this your set of narrow evaluations and you put them into your and you put them into your end of the year portfolio, you get moved on to Division 2. And Division 2 is the time that you get to dive deeply. In the beginning of your Division 2 work, we have you work with your advisor and you create what's called a contract. And your Division 2 contract really allows you to ask questions and decide how you're going to answer those questions. And for many students, it looks different. Never do we have a Division 2 project or contract that ever looks the same, because every student gets to individualize how they're taking on their learning. And so with your Division 2 contract, working with your advisor, you have 1 or 2 advisors by your own choice, and you get to again, as I said, ask questions. And in asking those questions, you decide, are those questions going to be answered by taking classes through Hampshire? Are you going to be taking seminars? Are you going to choose to do research assistance? You might study abroad. 30% of our students, actually almost about 34% of our students, study abroad. We make it very affordable for students by reducing your Hampshire tuition and allowing more access to that study abroad, rather than having to pay full tuition and then adding the study abroad costs on top of that. You might do field studies, you might do internships, and you also have an opportunity of taking classes through the 5-College Consortium, which I'll talk a little bit more about in a minute. While you're doing all of this, we have the learning collaboratives that I began to mention in the first, in your Division 1 work, about injustice and justice, the environments and change, media and technology, as well as time and narrative. All of your classes are based under those headings, and by doing that, it really gives you the opportunity to participate in a much broader set of activities for each of those learning collaboratives. So a single class might fall under the media and technology collaborative, and you can choose whether or not to participate in extra activities that they offer. And it might be workshops, it might be conferences, it can also be speaking engagements and things like that. We would like you to really look at a multicultural perspective. And similarly to what I had said about campus engaged learning in the first division, you actually are asked to look at non-Western perspectives, look at race in the United States, knowledge and power, how that actually affects both policy as well as cultural interactions. And we ask you to do 40 hours of community engaged learning through the entire 2 years, because again, Division 2 is your second and third year. To come back to the contract that I mentioned in the beginning, all of these things that I've just talked about, those are those things that you'll be putting into your contract. The best part about your contract, we call it a living document. It means that you can change it at any time. Multiple times I've had students come to me and say, oh, I just added this great thing into my Division 2 contract. I'm really excited to look more into it. And then after they look into it, they say, it wasn't really exactly what I thought it was going to be. That's not really the course that's going to answer the questions I'm asking. I'm going to take that off my contract and I'm going to add a different kind of learning activity. And so by doing that, it's your roadmap. It's how you're getting from the beginning of your Division 2 work until you get to your Division 3 work. And it is the buildup to the Division 3 work, which again, I'll explain as we get there, but it is creating tools for yourself. What tools do you want to put in your toolbox to help you continue to grow into this area? Most of the time, what we find in our Division 2 students is that they are interested in more than one area of learning. And so most often our students are doing what other schools would consider a dual major, but instead of having singular requirements for each of those majors, you work very closely with your advisors to see how you can satisfy the amount of learning that you're looking to take on and satisfy what your advisors consider reasonable amounts of work. We've had students who maybe they haven't actually added quite enough to their Division 2, but to be honest, most often they've added too much, and eventually they feel like they have to take some things off their Division 2 contract because they're just trying to fit in too many things. At the end of your Division 2 work, you put together a portfolio. Again, it will include your narrative evaluations and your self-evaluations. It will include papers and projects from each of your courses, any other meaningful work. You might write a retrospective about a research assistantship that you had. You might bring any type of learning from your study abroad into that. And then you write a larger retrospective about how these 2 full years came together for you. Before I talk about Division 3, I want to actually talk about one of the really important things that students in Division 2 have access to, and that is the 5-college consortium. Hampshire College was founded 50 years ago exactly, actually just last week was the 50th anniversary of the first convocation of Hampshire College. And Hampshire was actually founded by 4 other colleges locally: Amherst College, Mount Holyoke College, Smith College, and the University of Massachusetts at Amherst, which is actually the flagship campus for the university system in Mass. So in order to develop this new different kind of learning style that these other colleges came together, rather than considering Hampshire a competitive college with them or a competitor, they actually developed it so that all of our students can access these other colleges, and the other colleges can also access any of the other 4. And so at Hampshire, many of our students actually like to play what we call 5-college bingo, and they try to take classes at each of the 5 colleges. Amherst, Mount Holyoke, and Smith have about 2,000 students each. UMass Amherst has about 28,000 students. So it's a bit of a mini city, and it has a lot to offer. The best part about the 5-college consortium is that everything you can do on the Hampshire campus, you can do on the other campuses except live there. And you cannot play on their NCAA sports because we're actually part of the Yankee Small College Conference, and it's not your home school, so it's not actually allowed. But you can use your meal plan. You can use the libraries. There are almost 20 libraries between, I think it actually might be more than 20 libraries between all 5 colleges. You can have access to 10 to 15 million volumes of materials. And that includes everything from books to DVDs, even games at the Hampshire Library. And then it is also able to be delivered right to the Hampshire Library for you, usually within 12 hours. Sometimes it takes a whole day, but most often it's within 12 hours. You can use your meal plan on each of these 5 college campuses, and there is a free bus system that brings you throughout all 5 colleges. And that bus system runs about every 20 to 30 minutes, and the longest ride between any 2 colleges would be between Mount Holyoke and Smith. Hampshire is about halfway between them, and that's about a 35-minute ride between those 2. But from Hampshire, all of the schools are accessed within 20 to 25 minutes, depending on local traffic. So there's a lot that the 5 college consortium offers, including we do not charge you any extra money to take classes at those colleges. And you have about 6,000 courses to choose from. This year, it's actually between 5,000 to 6,000. Because of COVID, they've actually eliminated a handful of classes. But I know it'll go back up to about the 6,000 mark once we're all back on campuses full time. There are about 600 or 800 clubs that you can choose from. And if there's a club that you want to start, you can start it on any of the campuses. So it really allows you a tremendous amount of flexibility in order to have a much broader cultural aspect, academic aspect, while still having a very small, intimate, rural campus within Hampshire. The last part that I'd like to say about the 5 college consortium is that you are able to take graduate level classes. As part of Hampshire's founding mission, we wanted our students to be able to access higher level activities. And in order to do that, the other colleges agreed, those who offer graduate classes, which is Smith and UMass mostly, although Mount Holyoke has a handful of classes that they also offer at the graduate level. And those do not cost you any extra money. And for some, they do have prerequisites, and sometimes you have to petition the professor to join. But generally speaking, it's very easy for Hampshire students to participate. One thing that students ask often is that if you're taking classes at the other colleges, do they also offer narrative evaluations? And unfortunately, they do not. But many of those professors are accustomed to Hampshire students, and they will either have a conversation with you about what your standings are, what they thought your strengths were. But usually we find that once students have gone through a year or so of narrative evaluations at Hampshire, they tend to actually start self-reflecting and understanding and taking that on in their own way. On your transcript, it would actually list any of the other colleges, and it lists your letter grade. And again, what it really shows is when you're looking at a future employer or you're looking at graduate school, it's showing that you're an incredibly adaptable learner and an incredibly adaptable worker. It means you're going from very small seminar style classes, potentially to really large lecture hall classes, especially at UMass. And when you're doing that, it's really showing that you can go between styles very fluidly, and it has always been an advantage rather than a disadvantage for our students. So after you take all of these 5 college consortium classes and you have finished with your Division II work, it passes you on to Division III. And this is what a majority of our students really are looking towards. Many students that come to Hampshire, the whole reason they're coming is because of Division III. And Division III in your 4th year allows you to create new work. It's expected that in some way you are creating new work. And in order to do that, you get to choose your own advisors. We ask you again to create another Division III contract. It is your roadmap. You can shift things. Most students find they don't shift it quite as much as they shift in their Division II work, because that Division II work has really allowed them to refine what they were looking to study. And in Division III, we ask you to take 2 courses, maybe 3 classes, and we ask you to have some type of advanced learning activity, which might include teaching a class, it might be TAing a class, and it might be taking a graduate level class. And I did actually say teaching a class. We've actually had several students. One of my student interns that I work really closely with is actually teaching an intro to biology class next semester as part of her Division III work. She's a biological sciences student, and she really has that opportunity to take ownership in teaching a class. She will have an advisor who will work with her on that, but she is actually the main presenter. Additionally, for your Division III work, we ask you to create something new. And that can be anything from writing the beginning of a novel. It might be creating a gallery show. Oftentimes people do a performance, and it can be a theater performance. It could be being the director of a theater performance. Sometimes students collaborate, and you have somebody who writes a play, someone who directs the play, and then others who might actually be acting in that play or several plays as part of their Division III work. Other times people are doing a Division III project, and others help them with it, either to fulfill their campus engaged learning or community engaged learning, or just as a volunteer because it's a friend and they'd like to help them. But it is an amazing array of projects that students have done, everything from experiments in scientific labs that are eventually published. Many of our students are doing real new types of research that have not been done before. I can never remember the name of the protein, but or proteins, but one of our students is actually a neurobiological student, and she is studying the proteins in specific brain cells with people who have Alzheimer's. I really have to think about that one because she's a much longer name. I know I've left part of it out, but it has allowed her to do this brand new research. There's not a lot of research done on these particular proteins. And so she's really getting to dive in as an undergraduate, which is pretty unusual. We've also had people write business plans for startup businesses and actually help them implement it. We've had students that have created new materials, and I mean real materials. Somebody created a, it's hard to explain it, but it is a table that folds up for medical examinations, but it can be strapped onto your back and hiked into areas in which there are no roads, especially in emerging countries. And she developed it while she got the idea originally while she was in El Salvador, because she was hiking up into the mountains and realized the family she was staying with did not have clean medical care when their medical outreach folks came up into the hills. And so she felt like it was really a disservice. And what she did was develop that with bicycle parts, so that knowing that that is the easiest materials to come by in an emerging country. So as I've said just now, there are a huge number of things that people put together for their Division III project. And the thing that we look for is for students to really think about how to bring it into the community. At Hampshire, our motto is turning knowledge into action. Sorry, I really messed that up. It's the end of a long day on a Friday. And so turning knowledge into action is really at the core of this Division III work. So just as I said, this one student who developed the medical table for examinations really brought it into the community. By having it accessible with bicycle parts, she was able to allow people to use this knowledge that she has developed and move forward with it. Additionally, one of my most favorite recent projects was a student who was studying history as well as the interactions between Mexico and other Latin American countries. And he created a gallery show where each of his art pieces were representative of either time periods or connections or fractions between Mexico and these other countries. And so he made his history and his sculpture work come together and wrote a retrospective on each of the gallery pieces, each of the sculptures, so that it really was representative of the history work that he was learning. It's a pretty wide range of activities that students have the opportunity to do, and we encourage students to take on lots of new learning. I'm going to stop at that point for Division 3. I could talk a lot about Division 3. It really is what most of our students come for because it is so self-directed. Although you have that support of your advisor, you really get to choose what's most important to you. So what I'd like to talk about next briefly is our requirements for applying. And they're pretty simple, actually. We are on the Common App. We do not have any application fees. We are completely test blind. We have been a test blind school for over 5 years now, and we have been leading the pack. We personally, as a group personally, have been really thrilled to hear how many colleges have now gone either test optional or test blind, because that single test is not a representation of who you are as a learner, and we know that. And so if you are taking SATs because you're a strong test taker, that's wonderful. We don't want to hold that against you, but no point in sending it to us because your scores are fully blacked out. We never get to see them. So send them to the schools that are requiring them or that are optional if you're choosing, because it's much more important to send it to them. We look at everything on your application. So what we require in addition to your application are 2 letters of recommendation. We usually suggest one from a teacher and one from a college counselor. We know college counselors are really busy. If you really need a second teacher, we understand that. Just let us know. And that does not often impede your process from moving forward. Excuse me. The other thing that we request of you is your transcripts. Obviously, we allow you to ask a parent or a family member to write a letter of recommendation for you. That's not very usual in the application process for colleges, but you are welcome to do that. We encourage you to list all of your extracurricular activities. Everything from school-based activities to community-based activities, whether they are in something like a religious organization or a community organization, we really encourage that. If you are someone who has family obligations and you've not had a ton of time to do extracurricular activities through school or the community, if you're taking care of a younger sibling every week, if you're making dinner several times a week because your family is working late, if you're taking care of an elderly parent or grandparent, list that as an activity. Those to us are learning activities in ways that many other schools don't actually acknowledge. We want to know who you are as a whole person completely. Additionally, we invite you to send portfolio materials. You do not have to, but it is optional. And portfolio materials can be everything from a link to a performance, a video performance that you've done. It can be pictures of any artwork you might have done. It might be some type of photo retrospective of work that you've done in the community. It can also be picture writings that you've done. It can be, I've had students submit poetry and the beginning of short stories that they've written, even things that they've made for different types of, sorry, I'm getting distracted, for different types of scholarships that they've been applying for. So we really want to see everything. There's a place for you to submit stuff on the portal through the Hampshire website once you commit to giving us the Common App, and we're really happy to look at all of that. I've even read a 75-page retrospective on a student who was learning about philosophy. I admit most of it was over my head because I'm not a philosophy student, but it was incredibly interesting and their work was really rich, and I did spend that time to read the whole thing. So we're interested in knowing who you are as a person. Moving on to financial aid, we require that you do both the federal financial aid form, the FAFSA, as well as the CSS profile. And the CSS profile is what we use to offer a merit scholarship to every student. And we do not ask you for any other scholarship materials to go along with that. And Hampshire meets 95% of demonstrated need. So it's a really important aspect in our equity. And that is one of the reasons that we actually took SAT and ACT scores off of our requirements, because we want a diverse population. We want students who are learners that might not be great test takers. We also know that many students might not be coming from a background where they're getting a lot of support to go to college, and we really want to support that. So in addition to that, I'm going to jump to my last slide, which shows some of the things that you could access if you hop on our website. There is things talking about division free, which means after you've graduated, it's the students who have gone on, the work that they've done. We have a lot of videos that are on our virtual platform, and actually we're creating even more of that. We have a lot to talk about for campus life and events, obviously. And then one thing I'll mention right here, because it's on this screen, is OPRA, which is our outdoor programming and recreation activities. And that encompasses a pretty wide range of activities on campus. We have a rock climbing wall. We have equipment that you can basically borrow. It's checking out. It's sort of like an outdoor activity library, everything from kayaks to camping equipment, even bicycles. And it's a really wonderful opportunity for students to be able to explore things outside of their academic area. So I'm going to wrap up right about there. I just wanted to thank all of you for joining me. And I know that you're looking at a lot of colleges, but we would be very, very happy to learn more about you. So if you're interested, please join us for any of our events that we have coming up. We have an arts festival that we're just about to put on, and that will be a series of different events that include some student panels. We have a small short theater performance that we'll be portraying. We also have some tours that we'll be doing of our blacksmithing area. Additionally, we're going to do what we call a core festival, which is clubs, offices, and resources for everyone, CORE. And that is an opportunity for you to learn about all of our different resources on campus, and there'll be multiple activities for that. We also have a STEM set of events coming up. That's actually in just another week and a half, 2 weeks. So we would be thrilled to have you join us. I'm going to turn it back over to Susan, who is our moderator tonight. Susan, thanks so much for hosting, and I look forward to meeting any New Jersey students in the near future.
Thank you, Bernadette. It was a pleasure listening to you. Am I sharing? Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so I want to say thank you to the students that were here tonight, or parents. You might have been parents or counselors. There will be a quick 4-question survey when you close the last window. We ask you for your feedback, please. You can look at more sessions when the recordings become available. There's only 2 more sessions tonight, so it would, unless you're already signed up for them, I'm not sure if they're available to you. But the recordings will be available probably within the week of all of the over 200 that we have recorded in the last 2 weeks. Thanks again to Hampshire College and to Bernadette, and have a good night.